Hi everyone, and welcome to the Netgain webinar series. Today's topic takes a look at the cloud and why it is key to the success of your firm. A well-designed cloud that's tailored to your firm's unique needs can dramatically improve your current and future use of technology. Now, there may not be enough time to migrate yet this year before we get into the busy tax season, but there's certainly still time to make decisions and set the wheels in motion before tax season hits. Before we jump in, I wanted to quickly go over a few housekeeping items for today's session. I know everyone always asks, so yes, we will be recording this webinar, and we'll send you a link to the webinar within the next couple of days so that you can access it on demand. I also encourage you to use the chat box in the sidebar to ask any questions throughout the webinar. Our guests today will aim to answer some of those questions as they come in. And as far as the format for the next 50 to 60 minutes or so, we'll have a round of 40-minute discussion, and then we'll certainly save some time for some of those questions at the end that we didn't cover during the talk. So make sure you do send in some of those questions throughout the session. I know our audience today includes a mix of industry professionals and Netgain clients. So for those of you who aren't familiar with us at Netgain, we're a strategic cloud service provider that enables financial services firms like CPAs and RIAs to better serve their clients, increase employee productivity, and grow their businesses. You require and deserve, certainly, your IT to be ultra secure, highly reliable, and lightning fast with incredible support and compliance and stability. And that's precisely what we deliver here at Netgain. So you can rest assured that we've got it covered for you. We've come to be known for something that we call the Netgain standard. And it's a set of 8 premium features that come standard with every solution that we offer for every client and every time. Whereas you sometimes might need to pay extra for services like these, if they're even available from a provider at all, they just come standard when you work with us so that you can truly gain peace of mind when it comes to your IT, and it's as simple as that. One of these tenets is the top-tier talent, which is incredibly important for any financial firm considering the cloud. So without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce our guests for today's session. We're joined today by Bill Sorensen, a FinTech cloud expert, and Chris Tufto, the Chief Revenue Officer here at Netgain. Bill Sorensen is a FinTech industry cloud expert with over 15 years in the cloud technology space for the financial industry. He's created and led cutting-edge technology solutions for decades and continues to speak on cloud computing, optimized firms, and cybersecurity. Chris Tufto is a longtime cloud solutions professional and is the Chief Revenue Officer here at Netgain, responsible for bringing Netgain services and solutions to financial firms of all shapes and sizes looking to move to the cloud. My name's Phil Woken. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Netgain, and will serve as the moderator for today's webinar. I'll rejoin later as we wrap up. So in the meantime, I will pass it over to Bill and Chris to take us through today's material. So guys, over to you.
Great, thanks, Phil. How you doing, Chris? Good afternoon, good morning,
I'm well.
Depending on where you are.
I'm well as well. Thank you, Phil. Great having everybody aboard today. Some pretty awesome content that we're going to go through, and Bill, just why don't you roll through the agenda. Before you do that, though, again, as Phil said, if you do have any questions, please don't be shy to ask them, and we'll address them basically when you submit them. So with that, Bill, fire away on the agenda.
You bet. Thanks again, everyone, for your time. We know it's a key resource for us and for you, and so really appreciate you attending. Really appreciate also the volume of people that are attending. Thank you. Today's agenda, we really want to look at your firm's productivity, growth, your firm's growth, the industry, what we're seeing. The focus on cybersecurity continues to be extremely important. Compliance as it relates to the industry and what you might see from your customers, industry trends and cloud options, and then really what are those next steps. I think as we look at the industry as a whole, the move to the cloud continues to be faster and quicker, and at the same time more complex as it relates to decisions. So let's get started with kind of people as the productivity and really your production floor. We see these kind of broken down into core competencies for your firm, what you see as directions that you've been going, and your values and direction for how you deliver to your customers. The real focus on people as the key asset for your firms, and then how do you take from where you are and move forward. Let's just jump in on the core competencies. I think as we look at the strategic perspective, and really each firm is continuing to do the normal tax and audit, some business consulting, other types of services, we see that the change from being just a tactical responsive organization to being a much more strategic organization continues to be the direction that at least the organizations that have high growth are seeing. The change really tries to get you out of the tactical details, and I think that's where we see some of the cloud computing and cloud technology really being able to add value compared to where it's been historically. The global and industry perspective, everyone is really focused on not only delivering high quality work, but also looking at additional services. We're seeing much more growth in CFO as a service, bookkeeping services for small business, and have continued to see kind of the boom and growth of QuickBooks as a service coming out of the accounting firms. The place where historically we saw a lot of manual effort to get those QuickBooks company files moved around, the struggles with that. QuickBooks has been obviously the industry leader in small company bookkeeping and accounting, and really CPAs and accounting firms have delivered that consistently and continue to, but really trying to come up with a solution that provides not only value to the client, but value to the firm. So we see a push that way as well. Process and resource management in the firm, we're really seeing that operations is key. How you use your resources, your staff, the ability for that staff to work remotely, to work really outside of what would be the normal business hours continues to be a push in the industry. We do see, Chris, that there's some struggle with, the control in relation to that. If your staff's working remotely, are they working or not?
Yeah, and I think there's some edge of the firm, tools that we're starting to bring to market there, Bill, and I think those are real value. And I think the next bullet, technology and tools, I think you'll talk about this, but I think the things that are going on the audit side and, on the business intelligence side are all in the cloud and all basically linkable to other cloud applications. So I think, things like Validus, the BI tool that's within Office 365, those are all tools that are now pretty mature from a CPA accounting perspective that pretty much anybody can take advantage of. But certainly having a partner, like us, we can certainly we can make that a seamless and very, very smooth transition. And maybe you can make a few comments about that, Bill.
You bet. Yeah, I think what we've seen in the industry is the largest firms in the industry, literally the largest top firms in the industry have been looking at automation around audits specifically for quite a while now, and using tools like Validus to really kind of do the audit prep automatically. pulling the big data, as it were, out of GLs and prepping the audit paperwork so that really auditors are moving up that scale of value, rather than being, some of the detail pulling together. So, and now those tools that historically have been out of price and out of scope for firms under, say, 100 people, all of a sudden are available. And so that's a huge, huge benefit. I think the other piece, just to touch on it here, since we're talking about that first technology application side, is firms typically love the tax applications that they're using. And this move to the cloud, move to software as a service or web-based applications, although the direction is great and there's some great solutions there, we're seeing that many, many firms are reticent to move the software to web-based. I mean, it's just not functionally the same. We'll touch on that more in just a couple slides, so I don't want to give that away. I think if we look
I would like to, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to make one more comment on that, on the tool side, is that the one thing that the tools are is they're putting downward pressure on pricing, and we can get into that a little bit more, as we get into the presentation, Bill. But all right, keep rolling on people as your key asset.
Yeah, I think as the industry's looked, and we've been looking at, well, no, it's been probably a decade, looking at what the top 3 or 4 or 5 items per year are as it relates to firms. Personnel is always one of the top 2, whether it's holding key resources, growing that talent, providing partner paths for more senior staff, retiring partners. It's a struggle that firms are having, and we're seeing a lot of consolidation around that and some other things. As you look at your firms and your key assets, typically your direction is to address those directly and really provide growth paths for those key resources so that they stay. Those end up being a really key piece to growing the firm and really including paths for them so that loyalty is part of that growth. The other piece we see is the tools that now are available for staff. We talked a little bit about remote access. We'll talk more about that. Better communication tools. We're seeing many of the firms now using screen sharing for manager sign-off of returns or question and answer. Microsoft Teams and other tools are being used more and more when there's a group of auditors on a project. It's able to really let auditors work from anywhere, as well as then feel like they're part of the conversation completely. Flexibility during tax season is obviously a concern for staff. In our world, we see people working literally day and night. There's times where we've got maintenance to do and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, so we've got to, have our 15 minutes to update the software applications, on a weekly basis for tax. But really providing that flexibility around working during the day, maybe taking a break during dinner, see your family, and then the obvious workload may generate work in the evenings or work at night. I think that's going to continue. The interesting thing for me was a couple years ago, we were working with a larger, kind of a mid-sized larger firms, about 180 people, and they were continuing to require everyone to be on site for work. And so our discussions were, why was that? And really, was that around reality-based fear or kind of an emotional fear? In the end, it turned out to be related to an emotional fear. And so by using tools that someone like us can help provide, you're able to see who's doing what work, what activity they are, all those types of things. And so really allow that flexibility for your staff. The other piece, and it's a good place to mention it here, is once in a while you'll come across a key resource that doesn't live where you have offices. We've seen this happen where somebody in Denver, Colorado is an expert in a specific area of tax where a firm had a few customers and was looking for some, significant expertise. And with a cloud-based solution where everything is managed in the cloud, they were able to hire that person, have them work really anywhere, and provide a significant value to that end customer. So those things are important.
So, and I think cloud is really a flexibility quotient for firms. Bill, just talk just a little bit about, how if a firm was going to acquire a company and they had the same applications, and then contrary to that, they had different applications. Just comment a little bit of how that gets stood up and how fast and robust that can be.
You bet. Typically, in a non kind of cloud hosted solution, if a firm's doing an acquisition, the IT piece can be a significant impediment. It can be a 60-day, 90-day, 120-day delay in trying to get operations combined. If they had the same application, that was beneficial because training wouldn't be an impediment. If they didn't, that would cause a significantly bigger problem. In the solution Netgain provides, and that's available today, it really enables M&A. If you've got a firm that's running the same tax and audit suite that you're running, the ability to instantly move those applications into the environment and continue to have that group work with those, later then look at, does it make sense to combine those? That makes it extremely quick and easy. In those cases, in these cases, IT ends up as an enabler on the M&A side. And then if they've got unique applications, in reality, that's just another simple onboarding of those applications. So picking them up, moving, installing, and making them available. The transitions end up extremely quick and easy.
And Bill, we've got our first question come in. Ben wants to know, how long does it typically take to move a firm to the cloud?
You bet. So in our solution, where we're moving everything, we pick up, move the applications, move the data, we move the desktops, so desktops are hosted as well. That's usually a 30 to 45-day process. We work around the timing of the end customer. If they've got closes, month-end closes, and those types of things, we really kind of work around that. But you'd typically say a month and a half to maybe 2 months, taking those things into account. So it happens pretty quick, even as we're this late in the year, or with summer just about ending, making a decision by October 1st or October 15th can really get a firm up and have time before tax season this year. Good question.
Great,
well, let's look on to the solutions that are available now and kind of how we as an organization fit. So we got all these acronyms, and the cloud means many things to many people, and it's been confusing. It kind of is the marketers, and Phil's probably still listening. It's all your fault. When we as a technical group would draw the big cloud on the whiteboard as we were connecting different systems or different locations, all of a sudden that became the moniker of here's how we're moving forward. In reality, all these acronyms don't mean a lot to the business person. What they're really looking for is a solution that takes care of everything the way it is today. And what I mean by that is whether they're using on-premise applications, so CCH ProFX, whether they're using Thomson CS, whether they're using BNA's now web-based applications. What firms don't want to do is they don't want to disrupt their key staff and key operations. And so the concept of this everything cloud is really, it's all there. We pick up and move all the applications, all the data, all the desktops, so that those local desktops really just become kind of a connection method. Firms want to get to a pay for what they use method. Historically, the direction was, okay, we need to figure out how much resources we're going to use over the next 3 or 4 years. We're going to write a $500,000 lease to do that, and we're going to hope we guess right. In reality, nobody guessed right, and everybody consumed those resources early, and so there was this continued capital expenditure. Moving to this idea of everything's included gets you away from that forever. Provides really cost predictability. The goal is really to get to this per user cost so that everything's included, it's always up, it's always fast, it's always available, and really you don't get surprised by any of this anymore. Go ahead.
Second question has come in, Bill, and it's around, you mentioned CCH ProFX, and it says, if we move to the cloud, do we have to change that firm's cloud version?
Yeah, and that's where the answer is completely no. Our goal is to run the applications that you run now. We're running hundreds and hundreds of different unique applications. We run all of the applications associated with firms. So moving those to that, in this example, CCH's Access version, their cloud-based version, shouldn't be related to you want to move to a pay-for-what-you-use model, or you want to move to a cloud model. It should be focused on functionality. Any application move, any software move should just be focused on functionality. Does it fit the firm or does it not? If you do it the other way around, and this is kind of what we've seen firms do to try and move to the cloud in kind of the hybrid approach or toe in the water. And so they try and I know Thomson had an issue with this a number of years ago. Vendors are trying to come up with solutions that are web-based. They just are. That's great. But we don't want our firms to be early in that process. We want them to be late. And by running ProFX on a hosted desktop, on a cloud-based desktop, you're able to just continue to work just like you do normally today. And really the move to Access or some other application, isn't focused on, boy, we just need to move that to the cloud, but should be focused on your requirements for process and best of class and best of breed. So good question. That got to that last bullet point under the everything cloud is really, you don't have to change that today. You can take advantage and get advantages of all the cloud things you're hearing other people talk about or you're reading about. You can get those now without changing those applications. It's scary. Quite honestly, it's this funny thing, Chris, where it's a huge thing to change the tax or audit application. There's so much history, there's so much expertise and knowledge, and really, people can produce a tremendous amount of work related to the application because they know it. It's kind of like, if somebody forced you to change from Excel to whatever the new flavor was because it was new, but yet you've lived your life in Excel. So the other,
yeah, it'd be excruciating process in my opinion. So.
I know. So. It really is. It really is.
Yeah.
And we've seen that. People have seen that when they've moved to kind of the ERP packages. somebody's moved from Oracle to SAP somewhere in their life, or they had a client that did, and it's tough not to hate everybody in that project. So the key is to move this extremely smoothly and quickly, and really try and this last item, the safest and best way to move to the cloud. And that's been the goal at Netgain, is to kind of create that, move what you have, make it extremely glass smooth, run it on 3 or 4 monitors, increase the productivity because you give those people flexibility. So it's a great solution. We got a little more items, and I know we've touched on some of these. You don't need to change your applications, and that was a good question. The ProFX question actually is a really good question. You want to, so the second item's an interesting one too, and we've been around in both the managed service provider, whereas that outsourced IT level, and the IT support environment for decades now. And we know that there's a number of people who can keep the servers running. But you really want to pick someone who's got a lot of knowledge around your applications. Somebody who can add value, somebody who can really help change the firm. Chris, you typically say that you think that there's 1 or 2 key applications that a firm isn't running that they could be. Do you want to touch on that quickly?
Yeah, well, I pretty much tell any IT management person, or the managing partner, or the partner that's in charge of IT, that if you're still in the on-premise world, or you're still managing IT yourself, you really don't have the time to go out and look for applications that can be absolutely a productivity champion in your in your practice, because you're in the break fix world and you're always focused on tactical pieces. And I think now, what the cloud's opened up is, it's really opened up a new aura for the CPA accounting firm. And there's a number of really good applications out there. We talked about Validus and business intelligence applications, but there's other applications that you can really take advantage of, and you can really increase your productivity. So, and when you increase your productivity, guess what? You increase your billing. So, right. And that increases dividends, and that increases the bottom line and everything as far as a firm is concerned. So, it's one of those areas that I always like to challenge firms from this perspective, but it is a true statement, and the only way to get there is to get out of the break fix world, and just really get focused on growing the business.
You bet. I think and some of these applications, and we talk about them, and as part of our onboarding, we try and help firms, utilize them. Some of them are even as simple as Skype for Business. The package that kind of comes with the Office 365 environment, Microsoft's developed and is offering a tremendous amount of tools that people can just quickly use and implement and optimize their process, just even on the human side. So the other piece is this last bullet item before we move on, and it's really support. And if you think about it, we've got a tremendous amount of high value accountants working as that production floor, optimizing their time. What they don't need is IT issues to stop them or to impede them. And at Netgain, the goal is really this high touch support level for all users. We're always that first call for help. I joke that typically we're speed dial number 4. But those calls end up extremely short in time and mostly related to, how do I connect via here? I'm working from home the first time or working remotely somewhere else the first time. Those kinds of questions, and really just making sure that that staff is working as fast as they can. I do see we've got one more question here. Sue sent in, do we still need IT staff after we'd move? So that's it's a good place to answer the question. Typically what we see, if you're a firm of 50 to 60 to 70 people, you may retain somebody locally that's end user helping. Maybe they're doing some training. What we do see is that people that end up in IT after a move like this end up much more focused on the software application side, the business process side, kind of making them adding a tremendous amount of more value to the firm rather than kind of running the elevators in the back room. So so it really ends up depending on, can you move those staff to more strategic things, and just add value beyond what they've typically done. Okay, well, let's keep moving. We've got we're about halfway through. Cybersecurity. We every year the IRS produces stats on how much money it routed to the wrong people. Last year was a huge year. The previous year, another huge year. The billions of dollars that are fraudulently reported on returns and redirected are something that continues to be a monstrous problem. Additionally, if you look inside the firm and security within the firm, the goal there is to really secure everything, keep bad actors out, how to really prevent exfiltration of data or exposure of client data. Accounting firms have some of the most sensitive data that's out there. We've seen firms reported all across the country that have had dramatic exposures. One last year was a good sized firm. I think they were in the 120 size. They had somebody hack into their world and live there for, I think it was around 4 months before the FBI came in and finally told them that they were living there. They had gone in and created users for themselves, and then had changed routing and transit information on returns for redirection of refunds. And what was interesting and what was fascinating to me was they changed the return before it was obviously sent to the IRS electronically, and then they'd change it back. So they systematically did this to make sure it was hard to find. That's one thing where someone like Netgain, and we spend a tremendous amount of money around security, both on the infrastructure piece and the human resource piece, that dramatically protects our clients. And we're seeing that continue to be one of the top 3 items on everyone's list. The idea of a ransomware-free environment is a key piece too. As many of you know, or probably most of you know, ransomware is this method where someone gets inside your environment, they encrypt all these files, and then present you with an option to ransom them. You pay them anywhere from hundreds of dollars to tens of thousands of dollars to get them back, and that really ends up causing a firm a significant not only breach incident but exposure incident. With an environment like ours, we really do everything imaginable to stop that. there is, it's kind of a funny thing on the last item here, training is really about your staff's ability to recognize and stop cybersecurity events. At Netgain, we do monthly cybersecurity webinars around training. Many focus on social engineering, which is the key to trying to stop the exposure in your firm. And what we see there is that people really are the softest way in now. Technology's advanced significantly, so that's harder. And if you look at all the spam that you get, all these malware things, what they call phishing, which is a direction to get you to do something that you wouldn't normally do. There's really a focus that you got to get your people trained. What we like to see is firms do individual training twice a year. Every 6 months, somebody sits through the 1 hour training, whether it's with us or with someone else. We do ours as just part of a normal service that we do. So there's no fees for those kinds of things, but really you've got to get your people trained.
Yeah, I think just one piece before you jump off that slide is that if you one thing that people really don't realize too is that you can get a significant break on your cybersecurity insurance if you're using people like Netgain, because the insurance companies vet us. And so I don't think a lot of people are aware of this function, but you do get a savings on your cybersecurity insurance. And if you don't have cybersecurity insurance, you should get it. So,
definitely.
And I would say, depending on the size of your firm, anywhere from $3 to $10 million in coverage.
You bet.
Go ahead.
The next slide, compliance. Just want to touch on this kind of briefly. It's interesting in the industry, CPA and accounting industry, that there isn't necessarily a formal compliance environment as you compare it to banking or wealth management or medical. But there's always this, it's going to happen. Whether we know it is or not, that's always up for debate. I think what you want to make sure is that you've got risk management in place and controls in place to really do the best you can inside that firm. There's a number of standards out there. The NIST cybersecurity standard is what we typically see firms follow. And that's really control-based and looking at technical, operational, and administrative controls to really make the firm much more secure and risk reduced. What we do in our world is because everything runs within our world, we end up taking over a tremendous amount of those controls and being responsible for those, so that you've got much more focus on the administrative side, which would be security within the organization. What do people have access to? That type of thing. The goal is to really make people concerned about security, and really it's the partnership level at the top to sleep better at night. So let's, we talked a little bit, Chris, on growth around mergers and acquisitions, or when we spoke about that briefly. Do you want to touch on this? This is I think a good slide for you to address.
Sure. I think, one of the things that we see as far as our service is concerned, approximately about 6, anywhere, let's say 3 to 9 months into, running on our cloud application, we see our customers get the big aha, right? And what I mean by the big aha is that they realize that, oh, you know what? The service is always on. It's always there, no matter what platform I'm on, where I'm at, if I'm at home or in the office or I'm at Starbucks, I can jump on and I can get things done. And I think the big aha is that IT has basically become that utility, and we just plug it in and it's always there. And I think what firms realize from once they're on the cloud in a full cloud environment is that they've got more time and they've got more dollars to basically focus on growth. And I think organically they see a large productivity increase with their staff, and then they can move to more of a acquisition model since you're really location independent. As Bill talked about earlier, you can acquire that rock star in Denver or Paducah, Kentucky, or wherever that person lives, and that person can give you they can give you a presence in that area, and some of the times they can add a new value to your firm. So there's an interesting aspect about growth once you become cloud-based. Bill already touched on the acquisition side, and certainly if your acquisition target is using the same applications, we can stand that up very quickly and integrate that firm very, very quickly as well. Bill, anything else you'd like to add there?
Well, I think that's the key, and we talked to a number of clients and prospects that say, well, we always ask that question, do you grow by acquisition? How do you grow? We really end up being an enabler to that. And so even the firms that say, oh, we haven't acquired anyone, we're growing organically. Once they move and think about it, acquiring the 10-person firm that's a little regional firm, or in these larger organizations where they keep kind of acquiring 30-person or 40-person firms, it's valuable for the partner, and then for that parent firm, it's a phenomenal way to grow. So really enabling that, opening people's eyes to, gee, doesn't have to be that hard on the mechanics. I think that's key.
And I think people used to think it was hard, and now I think cloud and the enablement of the cloud is really changes that dynamic for firms.
Yeah, dramatically. Well, let's we're at about 45 minutes. Let's take a look at the industry and what are other firms doing. Really, the industry trend is the cloud is the new normal. It's really dramatically unique that we see somebody saying, well, we're gonna write that $500,000 lease again because we want to run it locally. We want to do that. We're not seeing that at all. We do see some of the hybrid things where, well, we're going to try and keep some locally, and then we're going to move to these SaaS apps. And there's some success around that, but in the end, you still end up with a big staff locally, those types of things. So it was interesting when Accounting Today kind of did their year ahead survey and said, well, who's going to implement and what are they doing? We see small and mid-sized firms continuing to move up this change. Large firms typically have already done this or have this direction for 2017. So as we're looking at the end of the year and into 2018, just make sure you look at your firm and it's no longer early adopters at all. It's really the mainstream piece that gets you progressing. The next piece really I want to touch on this idea of innovation, and we've been touching on that throughout the whole presentation, and it's really inside your firm. Are you looking at the drivers that really get you to a strategy that includes innovation? digitization, we're seeing everyone fully adopting that. Automation and big data, that's new, especially new for small firms. Is there a way that you can take advantage of that? And as a firm, we're always looking at efficiencies, effectiveness, what transformation we can do, mobilization. You know, a number of firms over the last few years have really embraced that ability to work from anywhere. So we really want to see, you know, as you walk away from even this simple webinar, you know, how are you innovating within your organization? The cloud and the ability to really have on-demand resources, you know, significantly can impact that. So let's look, you know, what about you? What about you as a firm? What about you as a partner? What about you as staff? You know, is this something you can take advantage of? The obvious answer is yes. It's really, can it enable me to grow? Does it stop me from spending capital expenditures on things we shouldn't? We always joke about, you know, when IT shows up to the partner meeting with some big number and purchase order, you know, nobody wants to admit they don't know what those acronyms mean. Nobody wants to spend that money, but they know they need to do something. And so it's this struggle of, you know, what do we do? Moving to someone like Netgain takes that out of there. I think the other pieces are, you know, what about cybersecurity? What about services I can provide my customer? And then really this, you know, next steps. I think the key piece now is, you know, we're mid-August when this is being presented. It's a great time to take an immediate look at this and see, is this something that you can implement before year end? If you let it go for the next 60 days, even before the season happens, tax season that is, you know, taking a hard look at can you get early implementation, you know, at the end of April, so in 2018. So it's very, very, very key. Well, Chris, I think.
Could I make hang on? I'd go back for just a second. I think the other piece is, you know, I think is with regard to QuickBooks, you could literally move QuickBooks at any time, you know, and actually you can move QuickBooks during the tax season. So as risky as that may sound, it's not exactly very risky. Right. For the most part, QuickBooks is pretty easy to move during basically for 12 months out of the year. So it's one of those things that is really key. But I'd say the last bullet is really probably one of the most important things is ransomware getting more lethal, and you know, every expert that's out there right now is saying that it is. And so it's one thing to you know, try to make sure you're secure, but getting with cloud-based organizations, you know, we spend lots and lots of money and have basically full teams that are watching this basically 24/7. So I really would want to make sure that everybody understands that piece of our solution and how important it is to your overall business.
I think too and that's a brilliant point, is the you know, a step that you can do in your firm is literally pull the IT director aside and say, you know, I want to see the one pager on what we do if somebody gets ransomware today. You know, what's it going to do with the October deadline? What's it going to do with, you know, our day-to-day process? How long is it going to take to recover? Can you, and this is that funny thing, and it's, can you prove that to me? Have you tested this? So these are key things for that local IT group.
So go to the next slide, Bill, and then there's a couple questions that have been submitted here. So let me just ask those. What if we have multiple offices, does this cause you guys a problem?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so we actually are rock stars when there's multiple offices. Today, with multiple offices, you're probably working on some things locally where you are, some things in another office. Those things are slow. It's like almost everybody's slow unless you live where the computers live, the servers live. With a solution like ours, everyone is fast. If you think about it, the desktops, since they're cloud-based desktops, are hosted right next to the applications, which is right next to the disk that runs the applications. And so the experience is extremely fast for everyone. We set up the offices with dual connections so that, you know, if your main internet connection goes down, you've got a backup so the office continues to work. And then we do have a lot of people use kind of those hotspots. I always say Verizon hockey pucks. I think that they were early in coming out with them. But for auditors that might be inside customers or government organizations. So multiple offices are, you know, the best thing we could hope for.
Thanks. And then the next question, and actually, you know, this, believe it or not, this question is going to come to me. It's how do you price your service?
Oh, sure.
And so here's how we price our service. We don't believe in nickel and diming you. So we have an all-inclusive price. It literally includes everything. It's unlimited storage. It's basically, you know, run, as Bill talked about, running your applications on the fastest and state-of-the-art gear that's out there. So it's all-inclusive and includes support and includes basically soup to nuts. And our service runs about, you know, anywhere from about $175 to upwards of $250 per user per month. So the beauty of that is that you know exactly what your IT costs are from a per user perspective. And Bill, any on that?
No, I think that's kind of a key thing on the pay for what you use model. You really, I mean, in reality, the IT world costs money. It costs money to run these things. But what you want to do is you want to pay on a consumptive model. And so, so we really get you there, and then that helps in the predictability and those kinds of things. We have one more question from John. Do you need a dedicated cloud solution to meet FedRAMP or other federal government security requirements? And the way, John, that gets handled is it's really not a dedicated hardware environment anymore. And for example, at Netgain, we create every customer has a dedicated cloud-based environment. So they get dedicated pieces of equipment or virtual equipment that are dedicated to them. And what we really do is go through, in your example, FedRAMP ahead of time with you, and as part of that onboarding process as well, to prep for what those compliance requirements are. So we're seeing a lot of focus on compliance get ramped up, specifically around, and because of the ransomware issues, and the volume of hacking attempts is just through the roof. So our solution and our focus ends up making sure that we can solve those and meet those, or quite honestly exceed those compliance requirements. So good question.
I think, and with that, I think we can probably hand it back to Phil. Phil, any housekeeping pieces that we have to before the webinar concludes here in about 3 minutes?
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate that. And Bill, I'm sorry for the acronym soup that us marketers throw upon the technical folks and those that are learning the industry. We do like to make things a little bit more complicated. So I guess we'll take that one. That's on us. But guys, thanks so much for carving out a few minutes to talk about the cloud and how firms might be able to manage that and migrate to the cloud. So always appreciate the conversation there. And on behalf of Bill and Chris and myself and the entire Netgain team, I want to thank all of you for carving out a few minutes of your busy day to join us for today's conversation. As a reminder, we'll be emailing you in the next few days with a link to the on-demand replay of this webinar. Looking at schedules, it will probably hit your inboxes maybe on Friday or so. And we'll also include with that information on our next webinar, so you can put that on your calendar for the next webinar in our series. And in the meantime, if you do have any cloud-related questions that we didn't cover today, Chris's contact information is up on the screen there, so you can always feel free to reach out to him there. We've also created a lot of blog and ebook content around various cloud topics as well, so you can always check out our Knowledge Hub and learn more at netgainfinancial.com. Thanks again, everyone. We appreciate you joining us for today's session, and we'll see you next time.
Great. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.